The screen. I wanted to just spend a few minutes just talking about why we're here and what the purpose of this conference is. And I wanted to just share with you what I hope you all are aware of, but it's our global ambition. As TBWA globally, this is our ambition, to be one of the 10 most creative companies in the world. And the reason for that is because we believe that creative solutions drive business growth. So at the core of this business, which you guys are all a part of, is a very, very powerful creative ambition. To be, and it's very specifically worded. It's worded about in terms of the top 10 creative companies in the world. It's not about agencies. And that's very deliberate, because we want to be considered amongst the likes of Apple and Google, and Amazon, those companies that are considered to be powerful creative entities. So what that means is that that's the global ambition, and being part of the TBWA network means that is a sort of significant driver of all of our businesses. So you need to be thinking about on a daily basis, what are we doing creatively that's helping to drive that? Yeah? Because if you're not on board with that, then you need to ask yourselves, why are you with TBWA? Because that is fundamental to what TBWA is about. But I think if we're honest with ourselves, if we really look at Africa as a region, and we look at ourselves creatively, we're not necessarily representing that well across, Africa as a region, not just TBWA, but as a region, Africa is underrepresented at some of the big global award shows. If you think about that, so we need to kind of think about that, understand what it is, and constantly strive to do better. I think part of the reason, however, that this is the case, and I've spoken to a lot of officers and a lot of guys around the network about creativity, and I think fundamentally there is always a sort of a client component to this, and I'm not saying that's the only reason, but there's definitely a client consideration in all of this, and I think fundamentally it's based on the fact that most of our client industries are relatively speaking, quite young industries. So the way that they derive competitive advantage tends to be through operational means. They tend to have significant advances in their stature, their market share, their dominance through operational techniques. So things like distribution, pricing, new products. They tend to be focused on those kinds of operational logistics, and those are the kind of things that drive their businesses fundamentally. So they're not really looking at this juncture. They're not really looking at creativity and iconic work as a means by which to drive competitive advantage. Yeah. So because of that, there isn't a demand from clients, for agencies, for outstanding work at this stage. You don't see clients beating a drum and saying, I'm not getting brilliant creative out of my agencies. They're getting what they need, which typically is, well, I've opened up a new supply chain to Kumasi, and now I just need to tell people about it. So I go out and make an announcement type ad. And look, there's exceptions to that, of course, but in the main, and generally, I think this is a fundamental phenomenon that exists across our African markets. Our clients aren't demanding that of us. But if you think about operational advances in technology, in production logistics, and all of those kind of things that make businesses win share, that's not a very sustainable model, because as has happened everywhere else in the world, most companies get very good at that very quickly, and there starts to become a degree of parity. And as soon as that happens, that's exactly when they're going to start to look to agencies and say, well, how do I drive creativity, and how do I start to capture share of mind? Because I no longer can capture share of market through simple efficiencies. And that's the point at which they're going to start to turn around and go, which agencies are going to do that? And we need to be the agency that's going to do that. It's going to drive our competitive advantage. Our competitive advantage right now is about saying, how do we drive creativity at the most iconic level we can, because at a very, very near point in the future, our clients are going to start to demand it of us. I don't think they're demanding it of us now in its fundamentally. Some clients are certainly, and in some markets it's happening more than others. But there's not a lot of time, I guess, before that is becoming a fundamental requirement of agencies, and we need to be able to be at that level. So for me, that's our biggest opportunity. People often ask me about creativity on the continent, and my response always is it remains our biggest opportunity, because we have got a long way to go, but we have a huge amount of latent talent. I honestly believe that within our offices and within our networks, and that's really ultimately the purpose of what we're doing here. It's about going back to the basics to some extent, but really looking at the fundamentals of what makes great work, how do we get there, and driving our own excellence, because it is going to be something our clients demand of us, and if they don't find it from us, they will find it elsewhere. I mean, we already see some of it happening, with foreign international agencies telling African stories. The Guinness Suppers and the Skype family portrait. I'm sure some of you have seen a lot of that work, but that's not a scenario that I'm particularly comfortable with. I don't want other people, foreign agencies, telling our own African stories. I want us to tell those stories, because I think fundamentally we're the best place to do it. So that's what the next couple of days is going to be about. The academy is called African Gunners, which is something that is an adaptation of something John has established internationally. And yeah, we're going to have some fun and really enjoy ourselves, I think.